Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Nick. I am the creator and lead designer of a currently unreleased TTRPG that is entitled Antique Worlds. This is a GM's retrospective where I break down my very first campaign that I ever ran as a brand new GM. I point out my flaws, what I did wrong, how stupid I am, and how I've grown and things I've learned to hopefully become a better GM. So if you've been enjoying this series so far, please share it with a friend. But right now we are about to discuss session 4. So let's begin, shall we? So session 3 ended with them blowing up the factory, entering the plains, and it being about a 3-day or so journey away from Hyperion. As they're traveling, they encounter this villager. He's a middle-aged man, but he's roughed up. He's been traveling hard. He looks like he's gone nonstop. He hasn't slept at all. He's just a gaunt face. It's very clear this man has gotten no sleep. His eyes are sunken and he's looking rough. So they meet up with him. He says his name is Dekest and that he's from a tiny, tiny little village called Camden, which is a couple days' journey away, not towards Hyperion, but not backwards, closer to the forest they just came from. He's traveling to Hyperion because he's going there to ask for help. Their little village there, it's in trouble. They need help. He has been tasked with going there and getting the help. So the party basically is like, well, is there anything we can do? Essentially, is what it boiled down to. Some of them didn't want to help. Like half the group did want to help, half the group didn't want to help. It was another one of those, let's talk about it. Eventually, they decided to help if they could. And what this man was saying was there's two problems. In the past day or so, something has happened to their crops where they started failing. And then on top of that, there has been the mysterious disappearance of some of the children and older ones in the village. Every couple of days, something comes into the village and takes either, a child or an older person. And they haven't been able to figure out who it is, what it is. It's resulted in guards being killed before anyone can see it. So he's seeking help. So the party's like, hey, yeah, we can help with that for a price. And he's like, yeah, we're super poor and our only means of wealth is our crops, and the crops just started dying. So we can give you what we got, but it ain't gonna be a lot. And they were like, okay, yeah, we can still do that. We'll still come and help out. So they reach the little town of Camden. So they meet the town leader, and he's this older man. He has a missing hand from when he was a soldier in the war between the Mayatans and the Pikes. I don't think it ever comes out what side he was on, but he was damaged in battle. He realized war wasn't for him. He retired as a soldier and somehow made his way as the mayor, or the leader of the town all these years later. He kind of explains to them what Dekest explained, just a little bit more detail, where he talks about it's mostly been the children that are missing. It usually, when they disappear, it's always at night. And then when it's successful in taking one child, it usually doesn't come back for 3 or 4 nights. And then he has a hunch on who it is, but he doesn't have the proof. And he makes an accusation against a man called William Sickert. Now Sickert is this, he's not a giant in the fantasy sense, but he's a giant, like, he was like 8 foot tall. He had like very, very disfigured facial features and body proportions. I kind of like to think of him as like kind of Solomon Grundy-esque, where just like a very big man that's clearly disfigured and doesn't look right. So he's making an accusation against him, and he doesn't have any concrete proof, but it really falls on that he lives on the outskirts of town. He comes in from time to time. He's really weird. No one really likes him. It's just a very no one feels safe around him kind of thing. It's all his accusation is based on vibes rather than truth. So the party is like, okay, we're gonna investigate. And then as they are traveling about, they also see the crops, and the crops are in the process of rapidly dying. And it's been told that so here it's heavily implied that the crops are starting to die because the factory has been destroyed. And I have two problems with that little reveal was very cheap on my part because I did not give the party the option in the previous session to gain that knowledge that this factory that they were in, it was pumping chemicals into the water for a reason. I did not let them have a chance to gain the knowledge of the why the factory was pumping chemicals into the water. So my little reveal that destroying the factory and those chemicals are no longer being pumped into the water is now affecting. So basically it was a cheap reveal. Says the party should have had an opportunity to make a decision if they wanted to still destroy the factory, knowing it would affect the crops or not. I didn't allow for that. So that was a stupid mistake on my end. And then the second thing I didn't like about that is man, I wish I could go back and redo session 3 with the factory because in my head canon, and I didn't reveal this at the table, but in my head canon, the crops were failing already and the Mayan Empire, the reason they were dumping chemicals into the water was to save the crops. Like it was keeping them from immediately dying. Without those chemicals, the settlers, the villagers would never be able to grow crops there, all because of the fracture. So this is part of the whole world dying. The crops are failing because of the fracture. The Mayan Empire's band-aid solution to this was dumping all these special chemicals into the water where the crops would be sucking up the water for their nutrients, and it was keeping them basically alive. Band-aid solution wasn't going to solve it in the long run. But again, say it with me, I played my cards way too close to my chest, and I did not tell my part. I didn't come out and tell my party that, nor did I give any chances for checks to be made to figure out that information either. And I don't even think I ever revealed that later on. Like at no point in the campaign did I ever reveal anything close to that. So again, like just ultimately they're small. None of this was game breaking. Like I didn't have any of my players quit because it was just like completely unfair or anything like that. So it wasn't like game breaking mistakes, but doing this retrospective is like it's really annoyed me in the fact that man, I could have given so much more depth to the world if I would have just told my players stuff. Ugh, so frustrating. So they ask after they kind of inspect the crops and everything, they ask where typically William Sickert resides, and they point him in the right direction, and they head out into where they think that Sickert lives, and it's starting to become like nightfall, like it's dusk at this point. So actually, I forgot a little bit of information. The guest and the leader of the village both at times mentioned that, like, the previous night, one of the children had gone missing. So they're actively searching for that. I forgot to mention that. So the party agrees to go find Sickert to see if he has this missing child. So it's dusk now, and they're heading out to where they think Sickert basically lives. They reach this like basically very isolated little farmhouse, and there's no one initially around. And then I guess they hear a child crying, and they basically kick in the door of this little farmhouse, and they find who they believe is the missing child. And then as they are leaving the little farmhouse is when like this bounding, jumping giant that is William Sickert arrives. He tells them to let go of the girl, and the party's like, nah, man, you're a bad guy. You're gonna kill her, or you're dangerous, or whatever. And he's like, no, I'm not. I'm protecting her. There was this entire back and forth, and eventually it resulted in the Sickert would not reveal who he was protecting the child from or kind of give them any more information. And the party essentially just did not believe him. And he wasn't going to let them take the girl, and they weren't going to give him the girl. So a fight broke out. This fight actually was like Tara's coming out party as a great fighter and a great support because she had some abilities that she used that just negated Sicker. And it helped the party, I wouldn't say easily, but it helped the party quite a bit to be able to defeat him in battle. It was one of those things where like if her abilities didn't land, the fight could have gone completely different. And it's actually Warden who gets the final blow and defeats him. And I believe that was Warden's first kill. I'm not 100% sure. So, one thing that happened during that fight is everyone who bought Power Ring, was using it. So they had these buffs and they were doing more damage than they did previously. And, it was awesome, great, so cool. Except for Parallax. Parallax was running into an issue. He was gaining the buffs of the power ring. But every time he was using the power ring, he could feel the power ring. Well, I guess the very first time he used it in combat in this battle, he felt like these little teeth bite into his finger that were coming from the power ring. And then every time he made an attack, so every time it was his turn and he made an attack, an act of aggression, the ring would get tighter and then it started like growing around his hand. And then it started growing around his wrist. And then it started like growing around his like the mid of his forearm. Every time he made an attack, the ring would tight down harder and it would grow and it started like just enveloping his arm. So finally, everyone's like freaking out at the table because they don't know what's going to happen. And then Parallax's turn, he's like, what do I do? I don't know what to do. And the party's like, don't attack. Whatever you do, don't attack. So he takes his sword, which is essentially almost very much like a lightsaber. It had like a plasma edge to it. But he takes his sword and in like one fell swoop, he cuts off his arm and it falls to the ground. And all of a sudden, the arm and the casing of the power ring, it starts to like shake and then it starts to grow these like crazy looking tentacles. And these tentacles act like legs and the arm just runs off into the night and completely disappears. So the table was quiet for a couple minutes after that because no one was really expecting that. And then Tara and Charlie, who also had power rings, I think were now kind of hesitant to use them again. But I made it clear that it was only Parallax who was affected in this way. So now that Sickert has been felled and Parallax has lost his arm, it's the whole point of Sickert is he is a very basic kind of parallel to Parallax. And the party, I don't like this was never meant to be a big reveal or anything like that, but this was the start of delving into Parallax's backstory. Because when Parallax wrote his backstory, he gave me like these are the details that are musts, and then he said go and do whatever you want with everything else. So it was the clay was mine to shape when it came to his backstory. So this was my very initial way of having a mirror to Parallax in regards to one being viewed as a monster, two the unknown origins of Secret that eventually do come out, and then three it comes out later on. It doesn't matter if I reveal it now, but it comes out later on that Sickert was originally the one taking these children, but then he kind of grew a heart and stopped. That is my third point into the parallel and the mirror to Parallax, which is Parallax was an assassin for a crime lord, and he was growing a heart and becoming a good person. So while that was never meant to be this giant reveal that the players were to realize at like the end of the campaign, this was my way to initially set up that arc of Parallax. Yeah, so they take the girl and they return back to the little Camden, give her to the leader, and essentially they thank them and they give them like a little bit of money. They didn't have much to give them, but they gave them something and thanked them for their help and were like, cool, the Wicked Witch is dead. We're safe now. So they finally leave and they are heading to Hyperion and they make it to Hyperion finally. And as they're going to, like, Hyperion is this massive, huge city, very like dark fantasy inspired. Like, it's sci-fi meets fantasy. It's a big city. It's nothing special. It's nothing, I didn't reinvent the wheel or anything. It's just a cool sci-fi fantasy city. And there's like the main gates and they're approaching. And so I'm going to give you fair warning. This is one of the worst mistakes I make as a GM. And to this day, I still feel bad about it. But they are going to the main gate. And remember, this is where Sloane is from, and she just came from Pike territory, and she's traveling around with these strangers that she does not trust. She also has the broken sword of the dead Anji Jin and the blood-soaked letter that had her dad's name on it. So she does not want to be seen. So she asks to do a stealth check, she asks, basically, she wants to be as hidden as possible. So I let her, and she passes the check, and I ignored the successful check. Yeah, she was successful, and I ignored it. I have a reason for why I ignored it, but it does not excuse ignoring it. Even my brother, after the session was over, was like, hey man, that wasn't cool. And I 1000% agree. If you let your player roll for something and doesn't, if they are successful, you have to respect that. If they fail, you have to respect that. That is one of the most basic rules of the game, and I ignored it. I hope the player forgave me for it and has no issue with it. In the moment, she wasn't happy, and I can't blame her. Oddly enough, her and I ended up getting married in real life, so I'm hoping that means she forgave me. But either way, I'm sorry and I love you. If you're listening, I do love you. So here's how I ignored the roll. As they're trying to go through the main gates, they open up, its military unit is leaving. They're all on like beautifully armored soldiers. Some of them are on these armored horses. There's a couple of shipments of these huge, basically armored wagons full of grain and food, and they're shipping the all like it's an armored convoy essentially that is shipping this food. And the leader of this little unit is his name is Nakoa, the second son. He is the second son of the High Lord. He's like 17, but he's already like a master swordsman, yada yada. He's so cool. He trained under Anji, the dead soldier with the broken sword, this broken sword that Sloane has. So Sloane knows him, he knows her, and even though she passed her stealth check, I still chose to have him notice Sloane and walk over to them. And the reason I did this is because he needed to essentially tell them where he would be, because as it comes out in a couple of sessions, knowing where Nakoa is ends up being important to Tara because he will have clues to her finding her lost sister. So, in my stupid, unintelligent brain, I said, hey, he has information that is needed for Tara to find her sister. He has to talk to the group no matter what. Even though Sloane passed her check, I'm going to ignore that, which is stupid. It's stupid, it's dumb, it's not fair to Clone, it wasn't fair to the table, it wasn't fair to anyone, and it was such an easy thing to get around. Like, all I had to do was have him walk past them, let her check be passed, and I could have been like, one of his lieutenants rides up next to him and is like, hey, bro, you know how we're going to drop grain off with that village that needs the grain because their crops are dying? You know? Well, your dad wants me to relay this message. Pack clean underwear, cool beans. And then the party would have heard where he was going to be. It's like, it was so simple. Like, I did not have to force him. I didn't have to ignore a role and then force him to go over there and talk to them. And it's just like, it's the dumbest mistake I've made because in my mind, I justified it as this is good. It's information that's needed for one of the players' backstory. But I completely ignored a role at the table and I ignored the integrity of the game. Like, one thing I preach so hard is if you respect the dice will respect you. Like, treat good rolls like you treat bad rolls, and the dice will always be in your favor. And I ignored my own rule. Like, I was a hypocrite in that moment, and I genuinely like that moment still sticks with me of I just can't believe I straight up ignored a role that my player successfully made because I in the moment couldn't think of a way to get this information to them. It's yeah, that's one that will probably stay with me for a while. It's actually been a couple of years from since the campaign finished. It's just like, man, it was stupid. It was stupid. So I apologize to both Sloan and to the table. I don't think I've done anything that stupid since, but still, like, whew, it was stupid. So yeah, the thing, like, thankfully, I wasn't so much of an idiot to where something negative happened to them because I ignored the role and Nakoa talked to them. They actually got like a special badge from Nakoa that would let them into the castle immediately in order to talk to Tavar, the High Lord. Like, it again doesn't excuse what I was doing, but it's like at least I didn't make it even worse. So he basically gave them information as to where they could find him if need be in the future. And then actually he told Tama where he might be able to find a giant snake because Tama is searching for a giant snake to kill. And then he gave him those badges. And then they enter into Hyperion and they do more shopping. And they go and they buy supplies that they need. I think they could buy weapons and stuff like that. And that is where session ends, they are getting ready to go talk to the VAR and see if they can gain any information from him. So, yeah, my big mistake of that session was ignoring a player's successful roll. I still cannot believe that I did that. That is like, it's like, and that's basic GM. Like, don't do that. Like, that is such a basic rule of GMing. And I still made a stupid dumb mistake because I thought because I knew more than the players that it would be okay, but it wasn't. So learn from me. Do not ignore players' roles. Don't take away their agency. You know, respect the dice, and it will always work out for you in the end. The other thing I could have done too, and this is something that should be talked about more, is if something happens because of a roll or a player's action and you don't know how to react, or you think that it's going to conflict with something you had planned, it's okay to take a break. Ask for a break, say, hey, I need to reconsider some things because of what y'all did. Nothing bad. Like, this isn't like, I'm not reprimanding you, like, but I need to reconsider some things. I did not think it was going to go this way. Let's take a 10-minute break. And no one's going to get mad at you. No one's going to blame you. No one's going to laugh at you. If anything, they're going to feel great about themselves because my players used to love whenever they found out that they did something that I hadn't planned for. For whatever reason, they love that. So honestly, you might be making them feel even better about themselves if you say, hey, I was not expecting that. Can we please take a few minute break? A few minutes. You get what I'm trying to say. Can we take a few minutes? That way I can consider some things and try and make a good story for y'all. Yeah, so I learned a big, big lesson that day, and I'm hopeful that I will never make that mistake again. One time is too many. I guess we'll see as we continue this retrospective if I make any mistakes like that again. So tell me, sound off in the comments. Was that mistake as bad as I think it is, or is it worse than I think it is? And then have you ever done something similar? Yeah, sound off. Let me know. You know, if you're enjoying this, please send it to a friend. That would help a lot. You know, getting more people involved in commenting and everything. That'd be awesome just to hear more feedback from the community and people who actually know what they're doing. But yeah, so that was session 4. Next time we'll be talking about session 5. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I will see y'all on the next one.